I'm Kwame Rose for the Real News Network here in Baltimore. Just days after the conclusion of the Democratic National Convention, the Movement for Black Lives released a detailed political agenda. Some of the demands focused on ending the war on Black people, reparations for slavery, investing into Black communities and away from corporations, and finally, community control and political power. Now, the coalition was made up of over 50 different grassroots organizations representing thousands of Black Lives Matter activists from across the country. In the upcoming weeks, the Real News will host in-depth debates and discussions about each demand, and we look forward to having those conversations. But now, joining me to discuss today's release are two guests who played an integral part in creating this political agenda. Our first guest is Janae Bonsu, the National Public Policy Chair of BYP 100. She is a Black feminist, activist, organizer, and scholar based in Chicago. Our second guest is Montague Simmons. He's with the Organization for Black Struggle, who was heavily involved in the Ferguson uprisings and the Movement for Black Lives policy table. Thank you both, Janae and Montague, for joining us. Janae, I kind of wanted to start it with you. Why now? Why release this policy just days after the Democratic nomination?
Well, we feel like it is very important to intervene in this political moment because neither the Democratic National Convention nor the Republican National Convention addresses the root causes or necessary solutions to the ongoing war on Black communities. And so it is up to us to be our own advocates and really take on the onus of putting forth a vision that really is reflective of Black lives actually mattering in practice, and really taking it upon ourselves to introduce a policy that is transformative and not incremental and reactionary.
Montague, this goes beyond. You're from St. Louis, Missouri.
That's right.
This political agenda, it's kind of different for, I guess, mainstream to associate Black Lives Matter with something other than police violence. What other challenges are more important than police violence that this political agenda addresses? Which ones are on the forefront and need to be addressed sooner than others?
Well, and I don't necessarily think that we're actually weighing them one versus the other in terms of priority. But when we have a conversation about what safety in our community is and what community violence looks like, it does go beyond that discrete expression of violence in terms of how police show up. It's violence when you're actually living in a community where you can't find good quality food. It's violence when public policy is divesting resources from a community where you can't get access to good health care. And for us, the platform, it combines those to show that not only are we talking about the explicit war in terms of criminalization, mass incarceration, police violence, but also when you're divesting both resources and people from the community through criminalization, when you can't find quality jobs or means to support it, or when a community is really denied the opportunity to have real political control, community control of the policy-making vehicles in this community. So these things is not like we're not prioritizing one versus the other, but the feeling was that the slate of demands are all interrelated.
And Montague, I just want to briefly just ask you, recently President Obama has hosted several discussions with Black Lives Matter activists. These were smaller discussions than the list of 50 different grassroots organizations who are signed on as endorsers of this political agenda, the Movement for Black Lives. What do those meetings, those small meetings with President Obama and those activists, what role did they have to play in creating this political agenda? And has President Obama accepted this agenda?
Well, we haven't heard any responses from the White House. I mean, we haven't formally presented, like this just been publicly released today. I will say that I think a few of the folks that may have been involved in those conversations have been in some way, or at least their organizations have been involved in the process. This process began with a convening that was held in July of last year. The event itself drew more than 3,000 people, and the assembly process, the People's Assembly that actually began this, contained somewhere between 200 and 300 people. So for us, it was important to make certain that, one, the platform itself reflected the work that was already happening on the ground, and not necessarily for policy experts to say, no, let's intervene in this way. Let's look at the work that's already happening, but also to make certain that as we began to develop the platform, that it wasn't just a few people doing this and presenting this and saying, hey, here's a remedy. This actually included hundreds of folks from a variety of organizations around the country that represent thousands of folks that go across the spectrum of Black folks in America.
Now, Janae, you are from Chicago, where in November, Chicago police released the video of the shooting, police-involved shooting of Laquan McDonald. And BYP 100 was one of the groups in Chicago on the ground protesting. How realistic is it that lawmakers, that political figures will accept this policy, will implement parts of the policy, if not the whole policy?
I think it's very likely, so long as they are put under pressure. I mean, and nor do we intend to just put this platform out here and expect it to pass itself. I mean, we see policy as, one means to getting to what we want, right? And so this will be in conjunction with, policy advocacy, lobbying, direct action, and grassroots campaigns that are built around these ideas. And so we will continue to put pressure on the ground directly to elected officials so that they have no choice but to adopt the agenda, and really putting hard stances on elected officials who are supposed to be accountable to us. Like they work for us. And this platform is serving as a tool for organizations, organizers, activists, individuals on the ground to really have something tangible to actually advocate around. So, so long as the pressure stays on and we're very intentional about how we're engaging with these folks, I think it's very likely.
And Janae, just to piggyback off of that, at the DNC, the Democratic National Convention this past week, there was significantly more protests against Hillary Clinton by Bernie Sanders supporters and other activist groups than there were at the Republican National Convention against Donald Trump. Also at the Democratic National Convention, we saw several mothers of the movement, the mothers of victims of police brutality, whose sons and daughters sparked protests. How inclusive do you think the Democratic Party is of an idea of such a political agenda?
Again, I don't really differentiate much between the Democratic and the Republican national conventions or parties in general. It is about the actual policies and platforms that will lead to transformative change. And we haven't seen those transformative solutions from either party. It's about shifting power and reallocating resources to our communities. And so we will use this platform indiscriminately with both the Democratic and Republican parties in order to get what we're calling for, and end to the war on Black communities and investment in our communities, divestment from the systems that harm us. Again, we haven't seen those solutions from the Democratic Party, so we'll continue to push for them.
And Janae, you serve as the public policy chair for BYP 100. I just wanted to get your grasp on how realistic is it to assume that some of these demands, if not all, will actually be accepted by elected officials, will actually be implemented into law through the legislative process. Is it too far-fetched of an idea to think that would happen?
I don't think so. I mean, I know that we understand that of the 3940 comprehensive policy demands that we put forth in this agenda, there's not going to be one sweep of, law passages or, these laws aren't going to be enacted in one sweep, but, it is going to be a process. Some of these policy solutions are short-term, some of them are intermediate, some of them are long-term. But we do wholeheartedly believe in this entire platform, and we'll continue to push it, so that we can build the world that we want to build. And so, some of these solutions, again, they're not, in priority order, but, some of them will will come to fruition before others. But we are wholeheartedly pushing the whole platform. Absolutely.
Montague, just briefly, as we're running out of time, we have seen a political agenda presented before through Campaign Zero, which was presented by a smaller group of activists. Just briefly, if you can point out, so what differentiates this platform put out by the Movement for Black Lives versus the Campaign Zero coalition?
Quickly, one, the process. The platform is a product of over a year of conversations, engagements, convenings, feedback with organizations from around the country. It's being launched by United Front, and it addresses more than just police violence, provides resources for organizations, and the document is just wider in scope. It was born from a very different process, and it's a document that's meant to challenge existing systems while offering transformational policy.
All right. Well, thank you both for joining us, Montague Simmons and Janae Bonsu from the Movement for Black Lives Matter Coalition, who presented this very detailed political agenda today. And thank you all our viewers for tuning into The Real News. I'm Kwame Rose for The Real News Network in Baltimore.
Thanks, Kwame.
Thank you.